mobile number that your Ola driver uses to call you. Now, not that you have to do that. That number is not a private number of the driver or the Ola guy. This is something called a virtual number, and this entire market that it falls under is the cloud telephony market. And we've got Shivku, who's the CEO of Exotel, and he has created this virtual number. Now, to a lot of a young audience out there, young tech audience, what is cloud telephony? Not that it's something new, but what is it that you guys do?
So I think several people might be able to relate to cloud communication in the context of cloud computing.
Okay.
So what's happening with the cloud revolution is that people used to have servers in the office, and somebody decided that, hey, the internet bandwidth has become quite large now. So why don't we just take all these servers and put it in a data center, and can we access the computing power and the storage capabilities of these servers remotely? And then one led on to another, and then now that's like a thriving, I don't know, $100 billion business now. In fact, if I'm not wrong, it's the only business in Amazon that makes money for Amazon, by the way, even today.
To be noted. So finally somebody knows how Amazon makes all his money, but look forward to that.
So now that's about computing. So now if you were to now apply the same analogy to communication, earlier companies used to have servers and then lines coming from telcos connected, and there used to be an IT person who used to manage it. And most of you must have seen this big white phone that a receptionist used to have. So all of that was like boxes and wires inside a company. So can we now put all of that into the cloud? And can we now just use our mobile phones, which are pretty good with computing and stuff? And can we now give a internet-based interface where the entire system can be programmed and managed? In fact, we went one further, even below. We said, can we now give what we call as APIs, which stands for Application Programming Interface, which is kind of like the language that computers use to talk to each other. So if you are now a developer in a large enterprise that thinks about setting up communication maybe with your customer in a certain way, using a certain business process, then you could actually write code using our APIs to create exactly what you have in mind. So a few years ago we made the decision that enterprise communication is stuck in the shackles and it needs to be brought out of this jail. And we thought that the best way of doing that was to simply give these APIs, which are like the basic building blocks using which we can build communication, and let the customer decide what they want to do.
Do you feel you've succeeded in bringing that up?
Oh, we have a long way to go. I think the concept is certainly getting a lot of traction. For example, nobody would have thought that it is possible to use these APIs, and you were talking about the virtual numbers that, for example, Ola and Uber use to. The ultimate goal there is to protect the phone number or the privacy of the customer from going into the hands of the driver, because, well, it's a transactional thing and you don't want that person.
How do you stop that in this platform that you've created then?
So the way it works is every time you book a ride, then Ola servers now pings our servers and says, hey, give me a phone number, temporary phone number that I can use to now connect you and the driver. All of this is happening in real time using APIs, and then so you call that number, number then is basically programmed to send the call to the driver and vice versa. So that's how that works.
So how big is this market in India right now? Because this technology, this platform, this concept is not something new, right? I know even if it's 2018, and on one hand you say there is still more adoption which is needed. Why do you say that still? Because it's been there for a long time, and there are big billion-dollar companies who have been working around in this. So why is the adoption now not full throttle still in this area?
Sure, actually we are transforming the market. So I think right now, whenever you think of enterprise communication, you're probably thinking call center, you're probably thinking telemarketing, you're probably thinking Cisco, you're probably thinking Vodafone, right? So there are a bunch of different players in this enterprise communication market. So I think you can probably put the market size in India for about $4 billion.
$4 billion
per year. So I think that's we've done this estimation in a few different ways. And so now Exotel's job is twofold. One is we are now kind of doing a little bit what Cisco does, a little bit what Vodafone does, a little bit what maybe IBM does, a little bit what Avaya does, and then of course they're all doing it on-prem and stuff. So we're putting it all on the cloud. So that's absolutely fascinating.
This is what a unified collaboration suite that you completely want. You want to become a UC player at the end of the day.
That's right.
Okay.
So that market does not exist in India.
Who's your potential buyer then in the next 3 or 4 years?
So, and then along, I mean, the several barricades that we need to cross. I think, the fact that the Indian telecom network is fragile, that's one. The telecom network itself is actually going through a lot of changes. 3G to 4G to 5G and Geo comes, a whole bunch of changes are happening. Then there are changes in regulations that are happening, and then there are changes in technology that are happening. So there is a whole bunch of moving parts here, and then we are trying to see how best to position ourselves. So that
tell me one thing. I'll just take a step back. I mean, it's like you're like the man in the middle. I mean, there's also the man in the middle attack, but you're like the man in the middle over here. Now, tell me something. You have customers in India. Compared to how many customers do you have across the world? I mean, say North America or somewhere in Europe. How many customers do you have over there? So comparatively compared to India.
We actually don't have any customers in US or Europe.
Okay.
So international customers are mostly from Southeast Asia at this point in time.
Okay.
So we are also an enterprise player. So the number of customers is not necessarily that exciting. But 20% of our revenues now come from Southeast Asia.
Lovely. Tell me something. So when you knew, I mean, before you were getting in, I mean, we'll talk about your checkered past also. But before you were getting into, creating a platform like this, boss, there are already big players in the market. There are already, settled players who have a lot of money to throw at marketing and do I don't know what all. What did you then go and tell your first 10 customers, buyers? It was the pricing a big thing that you throw at them, I will give it a lesser price. But what new did you bring to the market when you knew there were already so many big players in the market?
Actually,
were you ever asked this? I'm sure you were asked some of these questions from your customers. So what did you tell them? What was your pitch?
Sure. The vision for Exotel is to actually take pioneer communications to the cloud in emerging markets. And one of the fascinating things about emerging markets is that actually there is nothing called cloud in communications in any of these markets. So, while this is a thriving industry in the US, this is actually emerging in India today, and quite frankly, we are the ones who are creating it. So it's not like
And why do you think that has happened? I mean, I want to understand that. Why do you think that has happened now? Why is it happening now? There is an emerging market.
Mostly because I think 100 of us are coming to work every day. I think we had to actually do a lot of plumbing work. The regulations are different. The telecom network is different.
Yes.
The use cases are different. Customer expectations are different. So the reasons why people use phone calls are different. So actually there are changes in the market. There are changes in terms of pricing. There are changes in terms of technology. So there are a whole bunch of things that we need to change. So
great, lovely. So, sorry, but I have one question for you with that. Now, I'll go back to the same concept which an average man might understand, the virtual number concept. Now, say there is a customer, like you mentioned the word Vodafone, for example. Say a company like Vodafone, for example, who's a famous company, people know about it and all of that. On the other hand, say, I know because I was working on a story for the last couple of months, you have this fake call center who have been scamming people in the US who also use your service. How do you differentiate that? There are so many of them use similar services, similar cloud telephony services to reach out to customers in the US. How do you differentiate between a customer who's using your service for the right purpose or not?
Well, as far as my knowledge goes, I don't think anybody is using us for fake call center.
Okay. I'm just curious. If that happens, how do you? So because you need to also read the data, then how do you decide whether it's a proper company who is on a contract with us or not?
Sure. And quite frankly, that's not our job.
Okay.
So we think of ourselves as a, like you rightly said, middleman. So you can kind of think of Exotel to be like a next generation telecom operator.
Okay.
So, just like how you don't expect, let's say, a Vodafone to now sit and determine what calls are good calls and what calls are not good calls. Similarly, I don't think Exotel's job is to actually determine that.
Okay.
So, however, being an intermediary, and then obviously we conform to several regulations in IT Act and
there's so many of them.
So that's absolutely. So we are obligated to help the government unearth some of these issues if at all something comes up. So I think we are actually playing perhaps a better role in sort of helping the government in identifying some of these people easier, faster. Okay. Just like how it is easier.
So you are doing that, you're saying, as a process you are doing
absolutely. That. So just like how it is easier for the customer to set it up and go live quickly, it is actually easy for the government also to find out who is doing hanky-panky also very easily.
So how, if I'm a customer today, if I say I come from the state, say for example, hypothetically I'm an officer from the state government of Karnataka and I want to really tackle the issue of these fake call centers in India, there's a lot of money flowing in that area as well. I want to take your help. How long will it take for me to set up this entire platform of yours? How long will it take?
Well, I actually see two things here. So one is to set up a virtual call center, it will take, I don't know, half an hour if you know the system very well.
Half an hour.
So you can
like
actually...
half an hour, man hour, like along with everything.
That's it.
Okay.
Now, just to delve a little deeper on the fake call center, I think the business model in fake call center is to take PSTN calls and route international calls over IP.
Okay.
And so they use this disparity in regulations to make money.
Wow.
So that's the business model in fake call center.
Okay.
And I don't think it is possible to use Exotel in that manner because we actually don't do any IP calls. So all our calls are actually only on cell phones.
Okay.
So as far as my knowledge goes, it is not possible to use Exotel for creating what you call as a fake call center.
Okay.
Yeah. So
who are your customers right now? What kind of, even if you don't want to name them, but what kind of customers do you have right now in India? And Southeast, I mean, see, most of it also comes, you say 25-30% comes from Southeast Asia. So what type of organizations are these who use your
I'll be more than happy to, I'm saying that we are a proud partner of pretty much all the companies in the startup ecosystem in India. So
one I just mentioned, is that the correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, we think of ourselves as the backbone of the Indian startup ecosystem. So if you think of, let's say, VCs as helping the startup ecosystem.
The last time who told me that? The gentleman who leads AWS in India. We are the backbone of the Indian ecosystem because all the services they give.
Absolutely, right? I mean, I agree. I think AWS is definitely a backbone. I think VCs are a bunch of people who provide as a backbone, and I think Exotel is also a backbone. I think the mere presence of Exotel is allowing for these startups to create innovative pricing models, reduce risk, increase efficiency, and I think the one-upness of startups is basically implementation of technology. If you really think about it, right?
So what's the pricing like for this model?
It'll be like a usual, per minute, per SMS. There'll be some software rental, there'll be some integration charge. So
it's an as a service model.
That's
like as a service model. Also, to keep to that thought, do you also do sentimental analysis of all the data, the calls, and do you also work with the customers in accordance with that?
Not right now. Okay. We had a project that was underway for a little while.
Okay. And I remember there's something on that sort last year or year before that, if I'm not
That's right. So ultimately we decided that we were not able to build the kind of confidence that we wanted for that. And then now if you notice, it has gotten into this AI realm. And then there are a whole bunch of these companies, startups that are coming up in the AI portfolio. So right now our plan is to actually partner with one of these AI companies because you need a lot more than just voice to be able to really determine what the person is trying to say.
Fascinating. Explain me that. What are you going to do? How does AI and cloud telephony come together? Now, before that, help me understand. A lot of people come here. I've met a lot of people in the last 2-3 years. I mean, great. We're moving towards a new technology paradigm. It's just like what happened with cloud so many years ago, right? Everybody, cloud computing is the next big thing. Great. Not that something like utility computing was not there even before that. It's just a marketing term you give to that. How is AI a marketing buzzword right now? Because I honestly feel, looking at all the platforms or all the technology, whatever has been created for enterprise or consumer, there is still some years to go before we can call artificial intelligence as intelligent. First, help me understand that. Is it a buzzword right now?
I think it is.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think several people confuse heuristics for
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So in my mind, artificial intelligence is when a computer is able to make decisions without the help of somebody pre-programming it.
Absolutely.
And the ability for a computer to learn from data sets. So I think that's the essence of AI to me is. But what actually gets sold as AI is a human who is now thinking about the several different possibilities of a particular problem and then coding all of these things, and then just the computer is just going through a flow chart and making decisions. So that's not really...
Exactly. You still have a human interference in that model.
That's right.
So having said that, how are you merging AI and cloud telephony, if I can put it together? What is your role in that? How does your platform connect with it? It's really fascinating. Explain me that.
Sure. So I think, having said that AI is a buzzword, I also think that some really amazing work is going on in AI.
Sure, absolutely. Agree.
So now, the key to, I think, great AI is data. So now we have a whole bunch of data in terms of voice calls, right? Now, we have to take this, we have to take, let's say the company is using a support CRM, then the text that is associated in there. We have to take what is there in the sales CRMs, we have to take what is there in the ERP, maybe we have to crawl the web, and then, we have to now build systems that is able to now understand what the customer is actually trying to do. So I think it is possible for just taking one phone call and determining the emotional thing. I think compared to that, if you now add all of these other kinds of data and then build a model that's more holistic, I think that'd be a lot more successful. So now I think it's become a separate field in itself. So I think we will be parties that will be now using these systems. We'll be contributing data. All data systems will be contributing data, and then they will be building these AI models, and then we will again be consumers of this AI system to now make decisions on
Lovely.
So I think that's the way I sort of think about it.
Okay, lovely. So in this scenario, then in that case, now you look at what's happening in Europe. Finally, after so many years, GDPR. Now the thing is, it all boils down to data privacy. But I think it's a topic that everybody has an opinion on that. You have to get, the way I believe it, some part of privacy you need to give away if you want to live in today's era of internet, in a digital era where every device is connected. You have so many devices you're using. Now, having said that, you saw what happened in India last year, December. Justice Sri Krishna committee report came out in terms of data privacy. India still 3 or 4 years away, if I'm not wrong, in terms of us having a data privacy rule. How much will a privacy law or a privacy law impact this model of yours if it comes into play? Because this is about collection of data, and this is a lot of, it's like crawling online and looking at all data points along with the sentiment analysis of a call. So how much will privacy laws affect you?
No, you're absolutely right. I think the direction in which the whole world is going towards is, I think the model of GDPR is still extremely relevant. I think as consumers, none of us like spam. We are certainly flabbergasted that somebody knows things about us that we don't expect them to know. So I think I am completely of the view that customers should own their data and they should have the ability to decide who can or who cannot use it. Nobody else, I think, has the right. But the problem, I think, in India is we have to be a little bit careful. Half the people are still trying to understand what a smartphone is. And several of them probably don't understand English, they don't understand technology, and so they most likely don't even understand what privacy is.
Exactly, absolutely.
So now if you create all of these encumbrances before they can actually start using some of this data, then either they will just not use it at all, or they'll just get confused and they'll say, okay, use everything, right?
Correct.
So I think rules are one thing, but I think whether we are able to educate the masses about what is actually going on, I think that's the key thing here.
So for example, say the end customer is a ride-hailing service in India, the name which I took at the beginning of the show, and you are giving them this platform, and I'm the end customer in a tier 3 town in India using that, and say somewhere my data is being used for some modeling over here. Do you make the terms and conditions readable? Because the biggest problem with terms and conditions, nobody understands what terms. It's like goes into some white papers of 8 pages which nobody gives. But how do you help a customer in that case? If the end customer is me, for example, you and me, if you're using a cab hailing services, what do you do in that case? How do you define privacy for that person then?
So, by the way, actually, it's not like we reuse or repurpose this data without the company's permission.
Sure.
So, we actually have contractual obligation with some of these companies. So, we actually cannot use it unless the company allows us to.
Absolutely.
So, right now, that is the extent to which we sort of manage it. So, if the company wants, let's say, emotion detection, and if the company explicitly gives us permission to do it, then we go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Now, it is up to the company to decide how, on what is the basis in which they are getting their thing from. But I agree with you. I think something like a phone call is just very messy. Like, how do you ask for permission? Like, what are you supposed to intercept the call and then say, hey, he might be doing emotional analysis. Are you okay with this?
Oh God.
So it's I don't know.
I like that. So you want privacy on the phone? I want to ask you: are you still looking for funding? The last time I met you, we had a different discussion. But are you still looking for funding?
That's not how I think about that question. Actually,
Okay.
I think the question that I ask myself every day in the morning is, do we want to grow?
I got my answer.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So I think that there are, if that's the question that you're asking, I think there are 2-3 different ways of looking at growth. I think there are some kinds of business building measures that requires or necessitates the need for you to raise external funding. If your growth strategy is like that, I think we need to go raise funds. However, that is not to say that that's the only way to go.
Yes, that's very important to point out.
So I think, I hope that Exotel is a shining example of the fact that it is possible to build a tech startup in India, selling in India, growing profitably, and I believe we'll be in the top dozen companies in India that have sort of gotten to how far we have gotten from. So I think entrepreneurs are able to look at us as an example of what is possible and don't get bogged down by just what the VCs say, because see, ultimately everybody is winning it. Everybody is just people. So,
so then, I mean, how do you bootstrap against competitors who are possibly more funded?
By not playing their game.
Okay, give me an example. So there was another company doing the same field.
What I'm saying is that you can't go and try to form a team and play cricket with CSK and hope to win. But you can play football with them and win.
football with CSK.
Yeah, because I don't think they're going to be good with football, right? So you try not to play the big boys' game. You draw them into your game.
I know where the sponsors are going after this. But yeah. So, having said that, I mean, when you started, you were bootstrapped for a while, if I'm not wrong.
That's right.
Correct? And so when did you decide was the right time, this is the right time, let me let me go to the VCs. We're here, outside. And that also I want to understand. Which year did you folks start up?
2011 we started, 2012 we raised.
There were not many VCs in India, if I'm not wrong.
That's right.
So did you reach out to VCs outside India, somewhere in Israel, Valley or China? So what was the process like during that time? Especially help me understand, when did you decide, this is the time, I was bootstrapped so far, now I need to reach out.
Sure. Actually, there were two naive things in 2011. One was the venture capital ecosystem. The second one was me. So I wouldn't read too much into how I went about raising funds at that point in time. But maybe if I were to think about how I would do this right now, I feel like it sort of boils down to the market that you are solving the problem for, the nature of the problem. Does this problem really need external funding? And usually, the nature of business models the kind of business model that need venture funding is one where you are changing the behavior of the customer. And usually you do that by discounting so that they are able to adopt the new change. So those are the kinds of business models that usually require venture capital funding. Yes, I think if you're, let's say, selling in the US, you should probably try to raise from the US. You're selling in Southeast Asia, you should probably also check that out. But I think, so my own view on fundraising has evolved a lot. Usually the mistakes that I think entrepreneurs do is they try to use the fundraising activity as a validation activity. I have a particular idea. Now, I don't know if I'm faffing. Yes, I ended up hiring a bunch of people. I'm still not sure is this going to work or not. Let me go use the VCs as a sounding board. And if they are able to now put their money, then that's a resounding thing to say that, okay, you know what, maybe I'm not faffing, right? Maybe I'm sort of thinking straight. But I think that's the wrong way to think about it because, like I said earlier, I think VCs are also people. I think they have a certain agenda. And
I like how you elaborate on that. VCs are also people.
So, I think nobody understands the market. That's the truth, right? Market is just way too complex. I think if anybody claims they understand market, they are lying about it.
Just like when people claim we are the next big things in AI.
Absolutely, right? So I think everybody is just trying to take bets. So,
sure.
So I think people should understand that, and as long as entrepreneurs keep that in mind, I think the extent to which they find themselves in a desperate position to raise funds, I think that will go away completely.
So, if say today there's an entrepreneur who's just been who's raised his first round, so what would be the do's and not to do's over here before he goes to the next round? Considering that he has raised some money.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, the reality is that the VCs on the other side of the table almost always will have more experience with the terms and the details of the transaction compared to an entrepreneur. Because a VC, I don't know, maybe they sign a deal once a quarter. He's going to raise, I don't know, 4 times in his life. So I think there is an information asymmetry that's already set in. And I don't think it's possible to escape it at all. The best you can do is to ensure that you talk to other entrepreneurs, maybe other VCs friends who can now give you some advice on what to do and what not to do. But there are always going to be terms, especially if you succeed. And if your company is growing nicely, there are always going to be terms that you will be sad that maybe I should not have accepted this. So that's the reality, I think. Now, there may be some really smart kids who maybe they're able to think about it much better than I do. So maybe they're able to do it. But I feel like a majority of us will probably get to a point where we are like, I didn't understand this enough.
So tell me something. I mean, if you look at cloud telephony, when you would have pitched it for the first time, do you think there were enough people around who understood the concept? I'm like, okay, we can invest in a startup like this. Did you ever face that?
No, I don't think many of the people understand it even today. Okay. But that's all right. I think many more people understand cloud communications now than they did 6 years ago.
So was that a challenge initially, and did that force you to think it? Because a lot of startups have done that in India. Not a lot. If say hypothetically there are 100 startups which came up in the last 1 year, there were around 18 or 20 which actually decided to go out of the country and settle in countries like Estonia, in countries like Ireland, in places like Great Britain, because those countries told them, the VCs in your country do not believe in this model. Fair enough. This is a forward-looking tech platform. Come to our country. We'll give you citizenship. Build them out. It has happened. You know that. So did you ever think of like that? I'm not able to raise funding for a while. Did you ever think that I'll take this platform, go to a bigger market where people actually understand this, there are more customers. Did that thought ever cross your mind?
You know, something fascinating has happened in Exotel, and I won't even take credit for this because it was completely unplanned. We just made money. Right? So we made more money than what we spent for like 6 years. So we said, okay, let's just keep doing it. Right? So, you know, I think back in 2012, 2013, I think there was a little bit of, okay, what do we do? And, you know, how do, you know, we expanded a little. But I think after that, somehow we got into this mode where we are like, you know what, I think we know what we are trying to do here. And then I think people want to buy it. So let's just do it. And so I don't think any of these kinds of thoughts ever, but I mean, having said that, of course, I've had VC interactions after that. And, you know, some people, you know, think that it could be like this. Some people say it's not going to work. Some people feel like it's not even a model for VC. So all kinds of the whole 9 yards of what's possible in terms of their takes. I've heard all of them. But I think it's, I mean, I just think.
Do they talk to you now?
Yeah, I mean, more like friends, I suppose. But, yeah, no, I think, see, look, I understand where they're coming from. So,
so lovely. So, a couple of last things. I mean, how do you, where do you want to scale up after this? And you did mention about the AI platform because you also took a step back, 1.5 years back, the sentimental analysis and all that, which is happening. So, what's the next scale up idea?
So, I mean, there are a couple of new products that we are trying. There are a couple of new markets that we are attacking.
Apart from Southeast Asia?
Geographical markets also. But even inside of India, in communication itself, we are now trying to see if we can now, you know, take on a little bit, couple of more markets. So those are all some of the things that we are trying to do. But I think the ultimate goal is for us to help in this digital transformation of communication from on-prem to the cloud. And I think we are just scratching the surface of what's possible. You know, even today call centers are on-prem. Even today, you know, there are people who are sitting and calling using mobile phones. Even today, Excel sheets are used. So I think all of that could go away, and I think that's our vision. So I think we have a very, very long way to go. So
you want to take away mobile phones and Excel sheets out of the way, make it completely cloud, if I can put it that way.
Absolutely right. You know, see, generally I believe that computers should do stupid work and people should do intelligent work.
That's your answer for today.
So we'll take all the stupidity out of the system and we'll make computers do all that.
Okay, lovely. So is AI stupid currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, by the way, I don't even believe that computers are going to be able to do what humans can do.
Finally, somebody said that on record. Lovely.
I'm a techie, but I'm still saying that.
Lovely. So, you know, a couple of last things, and then personal opinion questions. And which is your favorite startup? Okay. Okay, that's a man in the middle attack. Lovely. So, a couple of personal questions before we end the show. Which is your favorite startup currently? I won't restrict it to India.
I've always liked Zoomcar.
Okay.
And
you use Zoomcar?
All the time. The experience could be better, but I think the way they have revolutionized, nobody thought people wanted to drive cars themselves in India, right? And then it took a foreigner to come and figure that out. In fact, I still very clearly remember I had this conversation with my father. He laughed. He's like, why would anybody drive somebody else? What if he runs away with the car? Those are the kind of questions that people have asked me, and it's just...
Have you used Zoomcar?
Yeah.
Lovely.
The other startup, I don't know if you will call it a startup, is True South.
Okay.
They make coffee decoction.
Okay.
And they sell through Big Basket and Amazon on all of this, and it's not those crystals, it's basically decoction. And well, I'm a South Indian, so no guesses on what beverage I drink in the morning, but I really thought that was a really nice thing to do, and I am a big fan of True South. I only drink their coffee now.
Oh, you love coffee?
Yeah.
I don't like tea.
No, I like tea. in Delhi.
Okay. Okay, like the way you put it. In South, you like coffee, you go to the... I like tea in Delhi. Lovely. Are these two your customers?
I don't know about True. I don't know if they will need a call center or whatever, but Zoomcar, I think they're using us for something. I don't know for what.
Lovely. One last thing. Did you ever... I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but did you ever feel like giving up? You know what? I've done things in the past. I've created so many big things in the past. Do you ever felt like giving up during the first year or so?
Yeah, yesterday at 8 p.m. I felt it.
Okay. So what did you do after that?
Nah, it's just, look, the moment you have to keep your emotions out.
Okay.
So
fair.
I think so every time something good happens, then you feel like I'm the rockstar CEO, and every time something bad happens, I can't take this anymore. So it's just, it happens to everyone.
Lovely.
I think you just have to.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is I think your co-founder was also the gentleman who was on the board of people who got you into the college or something like that, who hired you. Am I right or no?
No.
Okay. So because you went in as an intern, not college, at Yahoo, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. I joined at Yahoo as an intern, and then I made my first job there.
Okay. And you created Yahoo Maps as well.
Well, I can't. I mean, it's a large company. Several people came together.
Come on, you can take credit. It's okay.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. If you could put me in one line, what's the future of cloud telephony, particularly in India? Because if you look at what's been happening, a lot of rule changes happen in terms, a lot of amendments are to be made with the telecommunications industry in India. So people keep talking about 5G. Interesting thing is, we still don't get 4G and 3G properly in central Bangalore. But having said that, what's the future of cloud telephony in India?
No, I envision a time where instead of people going to their phone devices, we make communication ever pervasive. You are on your phone, you are trying to do a sales call, there is an app, you should be able to make a phone call, the call is tracked, it is transcribed, it is recorded, information is pushed. So that's the kind of vision that I have for. So I'll be talking about convergence of different kinds of mediums, if we're talking about convergence of different kinds of softwares. So I think gone are the days when there used to be a separate call center software and then there's a separate CRM software. I think all of that is just disappearing. I think the API economy is transforming the way systems interact with each other in ways that we've never really understood. And I believe that once you make communication ever pervasive, I think we would have ended up creating a way for people to connect with each other as easily as possible. And I think that's always a great thing for the society.
Lovely. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Shivku, who wants to take away mobile phones as well as Excel sheets from your office because the future is cloud telephony.
Thank you.